question, and I give the call to the member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it's good to see you in that chair. You're looking very fine, and stewardship over this parliament today, this chamber today. In fact, that's what this legislation is about. It's about stewardship. And of course, I welcome it because I'm a Liberal. One of the reasons that Liberals welcome principles of stewardship is because we understand the responsibility that one generation has to the next, to hand to future generations an economy that's as prosperous, if not better, than the one we inherited. The same with a sense of united society, which is one of the reasons why we oppose divisive identity politics that seeks to divide people and seeks to pursue an agenda where people see their difference rather than their points of commonality and common humanity. And, of course, one where we want to steward the environment to future generations so that they can enjoy the benefits that it provides, the natural beauty which we are blessed, of course the resources that it provides for economic opportunity, and also the opportunity through technology, advancement and economic progress to undo some of the damages of the past. And that's ultimately what this legislation is about. What can we do as responsible Liberal stewards to improve the health, the welfare of our great nation? And I want to congratulate the Assistant Minister on this important legislation, the Recycling and Waste Reduction Bill 2020 package. When I think about the outstanding ministers of the Morrison government and those who've come in full thrust and grabbed the issues head-on and made sure they have progressed reform in a constructive way that improves the health and welfare of our country, I often think of the Assistant Minister for the Environment, the member for Brisbane, who's doing an outstanding job in bringing together these package of legislation and passing it through the parliament, not just because of the substance of the legislation, though that is obviously critical, but because he is building on the good work of the Morrison government and the coalition governments to date and bringing along industry so that we're all part of the solution. One of the things that always bothers me, Deputy Speaker, about our political opponents is that they always seek to divide this country. They always seek to divide between haves and have-nots, young and old, and of course, when it comes to industry, what punitive measures they can put on them rather than working with them to be part of the solution and move our great country forward together. And the legislation the Assistant Minister has put before us is focused on bringing everybody forward together and recognising the contribution that industry can play as actually being part of a sustainable solution, and that's critical. Now, of course, Deputy Speaker, we're all concerned about recycling and waste reduction in this country. We're all mindful on a day-to-day basis what we can do as responsible Liberal stewards of the environment on how we can reduce our environmental footprint. In fact, for many of us, it goes to the foundational reasons about why we're Liberals. One of the reasons we believe in free markets is because it prices out the cost of waste. If you ever want to see environmental degradation, if you ever want to see environmental wreckage and a complete disregard for the natural environment and the use of the world's scarce resources in an efficient way, you just need to go and look at economic systems like socialism, which have no interest in environmental stewardship because they're rapaciously attacking the environment to try and meet the needs of people today. Liberals see opportunity from waste. They see the opportunity of how it can be harvested and returned to economic benefit, and how it can then be used not just to reduce our environmental footprint, but to grow the economic pie and improve the welfare of everybody. And of course, that goes to the heart of what is included in this legislation, particularly around the principles of a circular economy, where we can reduce our environmental footprint and reuse precious minerals, reuse precious metals, reuse products that may have a second life if we can find a way to repurpose the goods for a greater benefit. And this is what our constituents and the people of Australia want to see. One of the things that I see all the time is people asking us what we're doing for the environment. And of course, we're doing many things for the environment, but unlike our political opponents, but always want to put out the date further. If you look at their attitude towards climate change, they don't even want to target for today or even for a decade's time. They always want to put out further away so they can't be held accountable. Because at the heart of it, the positions they take actually aren't based on practical outcomes. It's based on rhetoric and vanity and virtue signalling rather than outcomes. And what this government is doing is not just on something like climate change, setting targets today, targets for 10 years, and ultimately targets for the future so that we can measure it against benchmarks and outcomes. We're also looking at what we can practically do today to improve the lives of Australians. And this has been at the core of the focus, particularly the Prime Minister, who's had a particular interest in environmental degradation and stopping the amount of plastics that go into our oceans. You can talk about things in the ethereal. We're talking about things in the practical and the here and the now. And we're doing those things. And of course, this bill, or this package of bills, is focused precisely on that, by recognising we have to limit the amount of waste we have. We have to find pathways for recycling and recycling investment in Australia today. We need to provide the pathways for every Australian, every citizen to be responsible, because then going back to the heart of the Liberal ideal. We don't want a country run from 600,000 bureaucrats from Canberra down. We want a nation built from the foundations of the citizen up, where they have the freedom to take responsibility, where we call them to their sense of responsibility in the best interests of the nation. And when the Assistant Minister for the Environment, Waste Reduction, the member for Brisbane, came to the Goldstein electorate later last year, we actually went and saw the practical efforts that the Goldstein community is taking, particularly by the City of Bayside and Glen Ira, where we're looking at not just what we can do in the space around reducing people's environmental footprint. That's critically important, where we're doing things to make sure we separate out green waste. We put out our recycling to make sure that it can be repurposed and reused, but increasingly looking towards food waste and what we can do there to generate energy as a new energy source, and of course as pathways of collective compost to reduce the overall environmental footprint of food waste as well. So at every point we're looking at what we can practically do and what we can empower citizens and communities to do, not to push discussions off into the distant future, like our political opponents, who seem to believe in the rhetoric of the environment but not in the practice. And that's the approach we'll continue to take, because it's practical, it's focused, and it's outcomes-driven, so that we can build a sense of confidence amongst the Australian people, but of course build up the economic opportunities in the industries that can thrive in an environment where we take stewardship and responsibility seriously. And I know there are lots of businesses in Victoria and across Australia who see this economic opportunity to reduce our environmental footprint and to repurpose our waste. And we want to encourage them. We want to encourage them to provide pathways to be able to find a purpose and growth. And this is also what I hear, Deputy Speaker, from schools when I go and talk to young minds who are interested in the future of the planet that they're going to live on. They do want to talk about the big discussions around global challenges we face, but they also want to know what it is that they can do to help. What is it they can do on a day-to-day basis, what they can do to take to their parents and their family members to improve the community they live in now. And that is the basis of the approach that this government is taking, and we welcome it. And this parliament should welcome it, because it's the basis in which we can have a sustainable environmental strategy for the future, working with industry, with practical timeframes, making sure there's voluntary participation so we can improve the basis of our industry, and of course, where necessary, to have punitive measures for those who have done wrong. If we take that approach, Deputy Speaker, we'll build the economy we need for the 21st century, because we all know the COVID-19 recession and the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed some of the weaknesses of the 20th century economy. But our opportunity, and what this government is doing under the leadership of the Prime Minister, under the leadership of the Minister for Energy in the work that he's doing, is what we can do, and of course with the Minister for the Environment and the Assistant Minister for the Environment and Waste Reduction, what we can do to build the economy for the 21st century. Prosperity, responsibility and opportunity for every Australian. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member for Goldstein. The question